Hi, welcome back. So we are in Chapter 3 HCC VO1 project at the outline project execution. In this outline, we're going to actually close on the application that we have been working on for the past few sessions. And it is the time now to work on the main window to connect the GUI, which the user is going to interact with the backend for the few models that we have already established and prepared. Now, essentially in the main window that we have actually created earlier inside the UI module, we are going to expand that to include the new modules that we have worked on previously. First of all, the actions module and then the module itself. So basically from the actions module, we're going to import the toScript, the list actions, and the button actions that we have explored before. And of course, we are going also to import from the module HCC that contain the connection to the H5 AI module. Now, beside that, if you could look at the Q main window that we have already inherited in our main class, I have added also the Q file dialog, which we're going to be using in a while. The rest just remain the same. So inside the main window, what we have actually have come to add. Now there are two variables here. You could see I've set them to none, and I'm going to explain them as we are actually going through the code in a while. This is the instructor. Everything still remain the same. The UI, the setting of the flag, the set attribute, and of course the closing buttons and the show minimize. Over here, you see there is a new function that I have overridden actually, the move window. Why is that? Because sometimes you open an application, which is our application, and I would like to carry this application somewhere around the window. Because you could see that we did not add any maximization to be filling the window. We have seen this is unnecessary. We just fixed the size, so this is unresizable window. But we need sometimes to carry this window somewhere around. To do that, if we get back to our main design, actually, you could see here on the edge, we have the header frame. So we want to say, well, if this header frame has been clicked by the left side of the mouse, what I want you to do, I want you to do the following. I want you to decide on the global position plus the position where you would like actually the screen to be moved on. These two arguments will be passed to the move function. And actually, this is where you could set the click position to that global function, and then you accept by passing the event. Now, this particular function, it's been actually recommended as the documentation of side. And next, what I want to do, well, I will go to the header frame on the UI, say, well, if the mouse event happens, then I want you to execute this function. And this function also must override another function out of the instructor after the show, that is to override the mouse press event, which actually take the self and the event itself, and it return basically the global position of the screen. So if we actually execute this, that means our application now, if we would have to carry the screen around, that will be possible. If we do it anywhere else, that's not going to be responding. Only on the header frame, as you could see here. The next thing we want actually to do is to start working on the functionality of the application. Just to add to your information, these are actually set for the progress bar. Now, in our actually design, if you remember inside the view here, we said when we want to click on the predict, there is here actually a progress bar is unseeable until somebody click predict. We want to load this progress bar to go from 0 all the way to 100 because the prediction is going to take a few milliseconds to be executed. You know, this is running over the predict function in the H5 module. So I don't want the user to seem like the screen's been frozen. This is just for a progress bar purpose. That's why in the very beginning here we set the essential value to 100 and we set minimum and maximum value for the progress bar. Now we have previously connected the two buttons, the view and the add. It's fine. Now let's go ahead and start actually the technicality. By the way, just would like to say, you will see here some functions like a clear add or clear view. Why these functions? You could check them on your own. Actually, you could see them here as I put them. They're basically just to clear up the form from motion to another. Say, for example, if I would have to fill some of this information here and I would have to add the case, all right? If I click add the case, I don't want the information that I have just added to stay inside these. I want to clean the form to be ready for the next case to be added. So this is one function they call clearing, for example, the add cases. On the view here, for example, if I double click on one of these cases, the case will be retrieved from the database and actually viewed here. But I want, when I click a new case, I want that or this entire form to be cleaned, and then the new one will be loaded. Or maybe I loaded one case and I go to the add, and when I come back to the view, I want this also to be clean. This is the purpose of these functions called clear functions. Just you have to work on them by yourself. But the important is starting the technical implementation. First, let's work on the QList widgets. Now, basically, we have a QList widget here, which actually going to load all the cases from the database. We need to populate this when the application starts. And that's exactly the purpose of this function here. So this function, it make an instant of the class list action module that we have worked on previously before this. And actually it access to the function fetch all from the database. So basically it go and execute this function. This function, remember, it return all the data from the database. So it does the work for us in the back end. We don't have to interact with the database from the main window. Now inside this variable here, I have all the data from the database. And I can just populate whatever I want with this database. That's why I'm executing this function called populate list widget, and I'm passing the data to it. So if I scroll down here, I could see inside the populate list widget, it does nothing. It says, well, check if the data is there really. There is data in database. I want you to do the following. First of all, I want to create name. That name is going to be graphed here. And the convention I created here to make case item hash, and there is a number. And this number is going to be indicating the ID number of the case from the database, because in the database, every time we actually add a case, ID number of the case will be incremental by itself. So I wanted this number to be retrieved somehow. Later on, we can use it also to inquiry about the same case in the database. So it is a way I found it more easy to execute. If you would have another idea, you could do it as well. So here I am creating a string to carry the name, which I say case number hash. And here I am just retrieving actually the index, exactly the first entry on the data, which is going to be actually the ID of the case in the database. Now this is a string. It will be actually the name, which is going to be populated or written inside the list widget. Of course, I'm creating an icon by calling a personal.svg icon, and then I'm creating QList widget item. Here we go, pass the icon and the case name. Now this Q item is ready to be actually added to the Q or to the view case widget. View case widget is this widget here. Everything is up and ready, and we are good to go. This is the first function you could see that I have populated. The next thing I wanted to deal with, imagine if somebody come to this list widget and double click on the cases that are there. What I want you to do? Well, first of all, I want you to actually go and execute this function called selected list widget item. By the way, the next function, reset progress bar, it's just a function to reset the status of the progress bar. Because imagine I double clicked on one case and I said predict. And once I did predict, the prediction will happen, and this progress bar will be filling up to 100. Right? It will be green, moving all the way to 100. So if I want to double click on a new case, I want this 100 to be reset again to 0. And that's exactly the purpose of this guy here. So you could see it doesn't do anything, but it just set the progress bar to a 0 again. But the important what it does actually is this. And see here, I am calling the item activated, which means a double click, not one click. So let's go ahead and see what is inside this selected list widget item. First of all, inside here, I am just making sure that there are no messages inside this error label, which we have decided to create to actually display messages to the user. For example, adding new case successfully, deleted successfully, or if there is an error, something like that. So make sure everything is clear there. But the important part, I want you to retrieve for me the current row inside this list widget item. Other way to say, if I double click on this, I want you to tell me what is the row number has been clicked. Now, once I have this, it means I have an integer. What I could do with that integer, basically, I could take it and say retrieve the text of that row. Now, inside here, I have a text. And we said the convention of our name here is going to be case number hash and a number. Remember, now if I have this, I can just split that text and extract that last number inside the name. You see why I created such a convention? Because now this number I have at the end of the text is going to be actually the ID number of the case in the database. Here we go. What I can do with it, great things. First of all, I decided to set that number of the case has been clicked to a global variable, can be reused for other purposes. So that's why I created here as a global variable called the current case selected. You could see it before the instructor inside the class here I created, and I set it to none. Now it has a value. Now this value, which indicate actually which case has been double clicked in the list widget. We will see later why we might need it. But anyway, let's go ahead now and create inside the list action class here. And then we call on the selected widget item, which is this function. Remember, it requires you to pass to it a queue list item selected just to start to go and retrieve for you the data. And if you remember, by the way, this return at the end the data inside as a list. So I will be retrieving all the information about the case has been clicked, plus is going to save the image of that case on the asset folder here. Now I have everything in my hand. What I can do is so simple. I would go to every widget inside the view, which is going to be here, start to graph. So for example, graph the ID of the case, the age, the status, everything, and also retrieve the image and graph it here inside this frame. And that's exactly what you see in here, right? And here's the image inside the asset folder. And I want you to actually graph it or set it as a pixel map inside the view patient image frame. Here we go. The case now has been able to be graphed. Now, if I run the application, I would see you. For example, I am here running the application inside the view. All these cases were populated from the database. Now, if I double click on this, you could see what happened. Now all the cases been populated and it's ready. It is the time to move to the queue push buttons functionality. We have a few functions here. Number one will be connected to the delete case button. So the delete case button, basically this guy here, if I click, I want to delete. What I want to delete? I want to delete this case from two places. The first from this list widget and the second from the database. And that's exactly what happened. So let's go ahead and view how this deletion is going to happen. Actually, we did it inside the back end, if you remember. Inside the push button class guy here, which has actually basically two functions, if you remember. We are calling on the delete item this guy here, which actually requests two things. First of all, requests the index, which case you want to delete from the database, and to request actually the name or to pass to me the list widget item. That means I want you to pass to me this list widget because I'm going to delete it from here and from the database. This is what it does, this function. Remember the backend. And that's what this actually function is doing to execute the deletion. So first of all, it tells, well, here is the ID case. Remember just now we said this is a global current case selected. Why we set it globally? Because when I double clicked here, I have nothing to do with the deletion. But now, since I am viewing something, the delete will be actually aware of the case because this number 15 is stored globally. So I am able to delete it anyway. And that's exactly what I'm passing. Plus, of course, I'm passing the UI.view case widget. Now, this function will be taken care by the button function. The case will be deleted, and then we're going to clear the form. That's exactly what this function does. If I get back here, I would have to click delete, and here we go. The case has been deleted, and also we graphed here inside the label. So if I would have to view a new case, everything come back to a normal standard way. Next, also we have another one we call load image, which is going to be inside the add. Now here, if I would have to go to add cases, I have this load case image. And what I want when I click here, I want to open a file dialog. Is going to be offering me how to go and pick up the image that I want. Actually, if you read the function, first of all, it set a local variable to call data image to none, and then it set a filter and set response to be a variable on a queue file dialog to open the file. Now, this information all depends on the documentation by queue file dialog. You want to check by yourself. So just call the parent and title or the caption for the screen will be displayed. And I'm saying, well, make sure that the filter, that the image or the format will be just only available for JPEG format. That's all, nothing else. And of course, after you finish, I will be retrieving from this response certain values, and I want to access to the first entry. It will be like a few entries. I just want the first, which is going to be actually basically the image patient file with the image that I have just selected. Now I have a file, or I have a path to that image, and I'm just checking if there is something has been selected, what I want to do. First of all, I want to make sure that the image has been chosen is not by mistaken have been chosen from the asset folder here, because we said this is a holy place, only contain one image at a time, and I don't want any access or interaction between the user by mistake and this folder. That's why I just want to make sure the image has been selected, it's not from the asset. If this happened and he selected it from asset, I want you to display this message. That's not true. But if it doesn't, it means select the right image. I want you to open the image, as you could see here, okay, or the file that has been selected was going to be image anyway, and then convert it into actually a bytes. That's why we are creating the image in a format of a byte. Now I have a byte, and then what I want to do, make sure also there is no error message before it's been graphed or something. And basically I want you to actually create this data image and store those bytes inside this variable. Here we go. After I finish, actually what I would do, I would create another variable here called data image blob. And this data image blob, again, if you get back to our main global variable, the value of this image will be stored in there, data image blob. Maybe we will use it sometimes later in the application, but for now just sit it down there. But the important is that I actually create a pixel map and I grab this as a thumbnail. So if you get back, when I click here, the image will be loaded here. This is very important to observe. All right, so I have all the information in my hand, and I put also the image on a global variable as in there. And now the image that I have actually taken later will be used, as you will see soon, to be added. This just only to open an image. So basically, if I click load here now, I'm able to open this as select the file, and I want to make sure that I am selecting from the right location. So by mistake, if I go to asset here, I choose, you could see you are loading image from asset folder is not allowed. But if I would have to get back and choose from any other location, for example, this image, it would be loaded. Now this image is inside the RAM and it's in a byte form, it's been stored globally, and it's ready later to be added as a case. Okay, so this is the buttons here. We're done with the Q push button, which is going to load the image. The next one is to add. What we want to do, actually, we want to go and say add case is going to be this function here. Well, this function is going to do a few important things. Number one, you could see here, it goes and have access to the image in a byte format, because now it is a byte. By the way, if I want to click add, I want to make sure that all the information are in there. I cannot just add case limit because all these are required in the database. That's why you could see we could make a condition to check all these are valid and in there. I don't want to put, for example, wrong age with letters, should be numbers, make sure all the information is correct. That's exactly what are these few lines doing. Just check this is byte, this is etc, etc. It's not empty. And if everything is all right, I want you to create a list. Inside the list, there are all the information need to be inserted to the database. If you remember, we create like case P here, taking the text from each one of them. And in particular, I am retrieving the image. Remember, it's a global variable now. It is ready for me in a byte format, in a blob format. Now, after you finish, you could just pass it to the function from the button function, this guy here, which is explored previously, add case to the database and to the list widget. So once I pass the information, the case and the widget to this function, what it's going to do is going to insert this case to the database. In addition, is going actually to put the case here inside the list widget. And if everything is okay, just a graph successful message. That's it. Actually, we are done. We got left nothing else. Last one, just to make sure, we need to activate the predict function. But I want to say, if I click on predict on this case, I want to make sure that the prediction is going to take in place. So that's why this last function here say, well, if the predict has been clicked, what I want you to do, go ahead, call the h5 module, this class model predict, which has actually load image in it. So basically I'm saying, well, call the load image. So what does the load image do? Nothing special. Basically it goes and it go to the asset folder here, because now whatever case I have clicked, the image of that case is stored locally. Now the function can just access to that and do the operation of prediction and return for me the case of 0 or 1. So basically the outcome of this will return 0 or 1. And I want you to check whatever has been returned here to be equivalent to the label. So here we have a case, patient status 1 or 0. So if I click predict, I want to make sure it's matched. Done, actually. We are off to go now. All the features are actually up and ready. Now, if we want to go, first of all, let's add case here. For example, let's say test 01, and let's make some wrong information with letters here, not filling this. Let's choose normal case. So we go here and make sure we are choosing from evaluation cases. Now be sure these cases are not exposed during the training of H5. So these are completely new cases H5 did not actually see at all. So let's just choose a normal case, since this is the real label, and add case. You could see here we cannot, because the age must be numbered. So we need to put a number. And here you need a case description. That's why all the information must be filled. So a normal case. Okay, for example, some description. Add, here we go, the case has been added successfully, database. Let's add one more case for pneumonia, case test 2. Let's put the age, for example, to be 62 or 69. Description, be pneumonia. And here make sure this is the right label so we can make sure our test is taking place correctly. Let's choose from pneumonia cases. Let's choose this case, it's fine, doesn't matter. Here we go, we have all the cases. Now if we go to view, go to the last case, this is the case we just added. Let's click predict. Now when you click predict, I want to show you two important things. This is the bar, progress bar, you could see, and our prediction is right. So we predicted this is a normal and it's a true. And let's make one more prediction here. And you could see here again, we are predicting right. Good. But what I want to show you in the terminal here, there are a few issues. When you actually run the application, you will be encountered with these messages graphed on the terminal. These are from the TensorFlow and Keras, and they're out of my hand. This is one of the challenges I told you when we rely on outdoor frameworks. There's something related to the built-in function. You have to go fix it, or maybe you're going to check that out. And it takes time, I felt, to load this on a local machine. That's why sometimes I'd prefer actually to customize the function on my own, but just wanted to show you anyway. So here we go, actually, our application up and running, and everything is all right, and we could see. Now it is the time to actually produce this to be an XE, so you can install it to any other machine, and the user have just to run that exe instead of installing Python or any framework. And to do that, we can rely on a function or external library does this job for you. If we go to pip list here, I want to show you all the libraries I have installed. One of them, actually, I installed this library here called auto py2exe. You're gonna just write pip install this. It's a very good one, because if you go here and say auto py2exe and run this one, the application will be loaded on the local host, and it's a very straightforward. So it asks you to decide on the location of the script. Basically, our main script is going to be actually the CLI part on this we run Python with. So this is going to be our main script file. And then you're going to decide you're going to outcome this as one directory or one file. We don't want one file because we have a whole lot of information, so we need one directory. And if you like to create with console, without console, so this like a script is running. And of course you can add icons, etc. So you could check the documentation for that. Now the outcome of this operation is going to be a single folder like that. Inside you could see here is the icon that, and here is the name of the application. So if I double click on this, you could see here, I did not actually hide this. I could have hidden this, but this is when the application started. You could see here, because of TensorFlow and Keras, there are some time of loading the application that annoys me in a way. So, but you could work on it on your own. I prefer to do the entire work myself sometimes. But anyway, this is the application now. I'm running this completely out of any Python needed or whatsoever. So this application actually completely independent exe file. And here is all the information that the auto py2exe have concealed for me and prepared. And by the way, this is only for Windows. So if you want to do the same application for a Linux server or any other operating system, you have to do the same exact procedures on that operating system. So that was all what we need to come to the end of this particular part of the project. Now we are actually ready to move to the next application and start working on it. And that is going to be the subject of chapter 4 for the application FSP-V01 project. Let's go ahead and view the details on the project. That's exactly what we're going to do next. I will see you then.